طيب وانا حابب اقول لكم حاجه قبل ما نبدا. طبعا انا مهندس وبقيت بتاع جي ار سي، والتوبيك كله ليجل اكتر منه اي حاجه تانية. ففي مجهود اتعمل مني ومن مجموعه تانية ان احنا نحاول ناخد مجموعه قوانين ونحولها لبرزنتيشن. طبعا الحمد لله السواد جميل وبيعبر جدا عن الحاله اللي احنا. خد وقت خد وقت خد وقت، انا مش هبدا، انا بس ايه ده مستر عثمان هنا يا جماعه. مستر عثمان ده البريزيدنت اوف كايرو ايزاكا تشابتر، وللاسف صديق قديم جدا. بس مصيبه كنا احنا بنبقى احنا اللي قاعدين وبنروست السبيكر، فدلوقتي هو وسام وهو صديق اقدم واقدم قاعدين جنب بعض وهيروستوا السبيكر، فربنا يستر ربنا يستر.
بس علينا
عشان ابقى تيستي اذروايز يعني. ويا ريت بقى نعلي يعني معلش عشان ده موضوع في الجريلينج مهم، نعلي الحراره في الاول فنحبس الجوسز جوه عشان تبقى كريسبي من بره بالظبط، ومن جوه يعني ده موضوع.
ممكن نحط سوبر مني في البريد فما تحتاجش بعد الحراره.
انا اللي مزعلني قوي ان احنا بنضرب في الاكل. لا انا اسف، نعمل حاجه مظبوط. في قانون دلوقتي يا بيه، في قانون. حد سمع عن كلمه ديث باي باوربوينت؟ انا عندي 70 سلايد يا جماعه، فاحنا هنساعد بعض. ومش عاوزكم يعني ايه لما تزهقوا هزوا، هعدي السلايد عادي جدا ومحدش يتضايق. مش يعني ما يهمنيش ان احنا نقرا السلايد قد ما يهمني انكم تتبسطوا، بس هو غالبا احنا مع بعض يعني. هو سام نام اوريدي، قال لك انا ما. طيب نقول لكم شويه تريفيا عن الموضوع لغايه لما يمكن يا ناس يا اللي بره القاعه. لا لو ما هو مش مهم، هو لو ما فيش حد عاوز يحضر خلاص نكمل احنا بس نبدا. رفقه بتقول في ناس كتير. اوكي عشان الوقت. طيب احنا هنتكلم النهارده على اليوروبيان يونيون سايبر لوز اند ريجوليشنز. البرزنتيشن معموله بشكلين. فيجوالي هي مش احلى حاجه، بس هي فيها كل الداتا بحيث انه بعد كده if we read السلايدز معاكم we can you can get the whole story يعني. انا قصدت ان انا اكتب الدنيا بالعكس. يعني السايبر ريزيلينس اكت اللي هو ده هيبقى في اخر البرزنتيشن خالص. النيس 2 اللي قبله واللي قبله واللي قبله. والسبب الرئيسي ان عملت كده انه بالنسبه لي الامبورتنس بتاع اللوز دي بره اوروبا هو اللي ماشي كده. فهحاول اكتر حاجه اركز عليها هي الدورة الديجيتال اوبريشن ريزيلينس اكت، لانه بيطبق على الفاينانشال انستتيوشنز وعلى الاي سي تي ثيرد بارتيز، وعليه ممكن يجي لمصر. النيس 2 بيطبق على الساس برودكتس. انا عارف ان في البانكينج مفيش لا سمح الله كلاود، مش عيب، بس في حاجات تانية احنا بنستخدمها حتى في البانكينج. يعني تخيل الناس عندها مايكروسوفت 365 فده كلاود، فنيس 2 is part of it. تبقوا عارفين على الاقل ايه الحقوق سوري زي الفل. ريحتوني جدا عشان انا بحس ان انا بحس ان انا بجيب سيره حاجات معينه في البانكينج سيكتور بعمل اخطاء غير انسانيه. خلينا نبدا. هو انت معانا ولا مع الناس تانيين؟ طيب وانتوا عارفين مين من الصبح لو تحضروا السيشن هسبليت دي في ديسكليمر بس بسيط ليجل واثيكال انه بما ان بتكلم على القوانين، فانا الفيوز دي somehow my personal ملهاش علاقه لا بالجي ار سي سامت ولا ليها علاقه بالشركات اللي بشتغل معاها، لانه at the end انا بشرح حاجه عامه. انا حاولت في كل الاحوال الايمجز ايذر اي اي جنريتد زي ده اور تبقى اوبن سورس. بحاول دايما اتاكد انه لو في حاجه خدتها من حد ببقى حاطط الكريدتس تحت unless ان هي very very public جايه من الاتحاد الاوروبي فهي محطوط عليها اللوجو من فوق. في حاجه برضو محتاجه ادهى انه القوانين دي معظمها متطبق وفي حته هتحصل بعدين، فانا حتى حاطط التايم لاين فبالتالي ممكن من دلوقتي لما تيجي تطبق يبقى في تغييرات. فدي الفيوز از اوف امبارح بالليل، لكن الله اعلم ايه اللي هيحصل بكره. خلينا نبدا. احنا هنتكلم على الليجيسليشن لاندسكيب، المسميات في الاتحاد الاوروبي وايه الفرق ما بينها، الديجيتال ماركتس اكت، الديجيتال سيرفيسز اكت، الارتفيشال انتليجنس اكت، وبعدين دورا نيس 2 سي ار اي، واخر حاجه واتس نيكست. ندخل في الليجيسليشن لاندسكيب. عندنا 3 انواع، ما نطلق عليه ريجوليشن، وده في الاتحاد الاوروبي بيبقى دايركتلي ابلايد لممبر ستيتس، وما يسمى دايركتيف، وده بيبقى جول سيت، وساعات بيبقى له implementing regulation عشان نضمن الممبرز تحطه، بس لازم عشان يتطبق بير كانتري، الكانتري نفسها تحط internal law بتاعها. وفي حاجه اسمها اكت، وده مصطلح على فكره ما كانش موجود طول الوقت. هو جنرال تيرم، ممكن يبقى ريجوليشن او دايركتيف او ديسيجن او ريكومنديشن، لكن في واقع الامر مؤخرا بقى بيستخدم للريجوليشن. ودول اكزامبلز، يعني الجي دي بي ار، معظم الناس اكيد عارفه الجي دي بي ار كان ريجوليشن بيتطبق زي ما هو في كل الاتحاد الاوروبي. والفرق الوحيد ما بين الثلاثه، او ليه في ثلاثه، ان الاتحاد الاوروبي شيرد ماركت، فهو عاوز يضمن ان الشركات تخشه بسهوله يعني. الدايركتيف زي نيس 2 له امبلمنتنج دايركتيف، اللي هو انت لازم تمشي على الدايركتيف ده، بس هنسيبك تمشي عليه بمزاجك. يعني دي الفكره كلها. والاكت زي ما قلت لكم هي زي السايبر ريزيلينس اكت اللي هنتكلم عليه في الاخر. طيب ايه اللي حصل السنتين 3 اللي فاتوا؟ لو لاحظتوا اول 2 دايركتيف، وهتلاقوا، وده لسه ما خلصتش على فكره، ده انا بس يعني جبت الحبه دول. لدرجه ان بقى في مصطلح في الجي ار سي كوميونتي في اوروبا قال لك ذا الفابت تسونامي. سي اي ار، نيس 2، جي دي بي ار، سي اس اي، دي ام اي، دي اس اي، دورا، دي جي اي، داتا اكت، اي اي دي اس 2، اي اي اكت، سي ار اي، اي برايفسي. يعني اتس ا لوت، وعشان كده سميتها اتس تسونامي. اتس تسونامي بيلف كل حاجه. وبس عشان نضحكوا شويه، حد لاحظ ان في حاجه غلط في الصوره دي؟ في معلم المفروض ما يكونش موجود لانه ما بقاش في الاتحاد الاوروبي، ويست مينستر. بس الاي اي لسه ما يعرفش، فما تبقوش تقولوا له لو سمحتوا. الريجليشنز دي حاجه من الحاجات المهمه، ان احنا معظمها بيتكتب السنه اللي اتعمل فيها او توافق عليه سلاش رقمه زي ريفرنس. فانا هنا مرتبهم من الدايركتيفز في 2022. مثلا نيس 2 طلع في 2022، لكن تطبيقاته كلها باديه السنه، يعني اخر السنه اللي فاتت، اخر 2024. ف it is still seen as recent لانه ما طبقش. الريجوليشن زي السايبر سكيورتي اكت ده مش هنتكلم عليه، طلع في 2019، له امبليكيشنز بتحصل اليومين دول برضه. فمش معنى ان القانون طلع من 3 سنين ان هو متطبق، او ان هو خلاص خلص بزنس از يوجوال، ده مش حقيقي. فانا رتبتهم بالترتيب بتاع السنين. الاي برايفسي ريجوليشن ده جزء كبير جدا، عاوزين يخشوا جوه البرايفسي بتاعت السوشيال ميديا عشان يطمنوا انه مفيش تيروريزم. من ناحيه نحمي حقوق المواطنين، ومن ناحيه نطمن ان هم ما بيعملوش حاجه مش ولا بد. فعليه هو لازال لغايه دلوقتي بروبوزد وما تمش الانتهاء منه. في غير دول كتير، وفي الواتس نيكست معلش هتتعبوا معايا شويه، هحكي لكم ايه اللي هيحصل فيهم، بس في كتير قوي موجودين. ودلوقتي بقى في مرحله من ان we are over regulated to some extent. اول حاجه هبدا بيها الديجيتال ماركتس اكت. انا هحاول قدر الامكان بسبب الوقت، كمان بسبب ان احنا اتاخرنا، ان انا مش هغوص قوي. انا حابب اديكم فكره وايه اللي ممكن يكون ينفعنا احنا هنا في مصر، او يعني نستفيد بيه كبزنسز، وايه اللي هيتاتشنا. فالدي ام اي ودي اس اي مش بيتاتشونا، بس هم بينفعونا. الغرض الرئيسي من الديجيتال ماركتس اكت هو ان هم لقوا انه في يا حاج، لقوا ان في مجموعه من الديجيتال ماركتس الكبار، وساعات بيقول عليهم very large online platforms or very large online search engines، بس السيرش انجنز في الدي اس اي في الناحيه الثانيه. ودول الديزيجنيشنز بتاعتهم، الاتحاد الاوروبي هيجي كل مرحله يحط مجموعه من الجيت كيبرز اللي هم الكبار قوي. والجيت كيبرز دول مثلا من ضمن الحاجات اللي لازم يكونوا معديين 10% من اجمالي الناس اللي في الاتحاد الاوروبي اللي هم 450 مليون. فلازم يكون ديلي بيعدي عليهم 40 مليون واحد، مش 40 مليون هيت، 40 مليون يونيك بيرسون. طيب الناس دي انا دايما برضو حاجه يمكن على البرزنتيشن عشان تسهل الامور، انا دايما حاطط شكل القانون ومتقسم ازاي، لان الشابترز يوجولي بتعبر عن هو القانون عاوز يعمل ايه. طبعا بعض الاحيان الموضوع بيبقى ليجل زي السكوب، الديفينيشنز، فدايما هتلاقوا جنرال بروفيجنز او سكوب في الاول، لكن بعد كده هو مثلا مدي تشابتر كامل للجيت كيبرز، تشابتر كامل ايه اللي بيعمل ليميت كونتستابيليتي، اللي هي ان الناس تقدر تكونتست وذ ايتش اذر. فالقانون ده الغرض الرئيسي منه انه يسمح للناس تخش او الانتيتيز انها تخش الماركت. اللي بعد كده ساعات بيبقى نواحي تنظيميه زي شابتر 5 مين اللي انفستيجيت مين اللي انفورس، اعتقد ده مش مهم قوي بالنسبه لنا، بحطه بس يعني في ليتر اون لو هيبقى فيه ريبورتنج، والريبورتنج ده احتمال احنا نضطر نعمله فجايب سيرته يعني. وبيديكي فكره حجمه، يعني لو لاحظتوا ده كله على بعض 54 ماده، فما هوش رقم كبير، ولكن الايفكت بتاعه ممتاز علينا احنا. الجيت كيبرز اللي محطوطين الفابت، امازون، ابل، بوكينج، بايت دانس، ميتا، مايكروسوفت. وده السبب هم محطوطين ليه. يعني مثلا جوجل عندها جوجل مابس وجوجل بلاي، وامازون عندها الماركت بليس والاب ستور بتاع جوجل موجود برضو. وبوكينج دوت كوم، بوكينج دوت كوم I think that's not a correct one. بس ميبي ابقى غلطان، لا بوكينج موجود. السوشيال نتوركس موجودين، فعشان كده فور اكزامبل الفابت موجوده جوجل، امازون موجود في امازون، وهكذا. دول بس اللي بيطبق عليهم القانون. طب ايه لازمه ان احنا نعرف القانون ده من بابه؟ القانون ده بيتكلم على او بشكل او باخر حدد الحياه الموجوده حاليا بالنسبه للارج سيستمز، ان في بلاتفورم مانجر زي مثلا جوجل، وبيقدم كور سيرفيسز زي الماركت بليس، وبعدين في قصاده بروديوسرز للسيرفيس اللي هم الشركات اللي اصغر اللي بتستخدم جوجل ماركت بليس، امازون ماركت بليس، اللي بيستخدم فيسبوك عشان يعمل شوبينج، اللي بيبيع، وفي الاند يوزرز اللي هو حضراتنا. دي الارتكل 5 اللي بتتكلم على ايه اللي ما ينفعش يعمله هذا البلاتفورم مانجر. طيب ان رياليتي ده فارق معانا في ايه؟ ده فارق في حاجات تكنيكال قوي، زي ان مثلا جوجل وامازون ما يقدروش يبيعوا فاير وول بتاعهم ويمنعوا الفايروات التانية من على الكلاود مثلا، ما يقدروش يبيعوا الواف بتاعهم عشان كده هم بيلغوا في مونوبولي. وفي ناحية تانية هم ما يقدروش يستخدموا الداتا بتاعتي من الجيميل ويعمل بيها حاجة او الا لو في كونسنت، فدايما في كونسبت الكونسنت. برضو في ترانسبيرنسي حوالين الاونلاين ادفرتايزنج. طيب برضو عشان ما نغش قوي في قانون مش هيأثر معانا جامد، هقول لكم انا حطيته ليه. انا حطيته لانه بقى عند جوجل، ولو لاحظتوا انه اللوجو بتاع الفابت كمان ظاهر، لان الفابت هي الشركه اللي محطوطه، بقى عندهم الدي ام اي كومبلاينس ريبورت. فالكومبلاينس ريبورت ده بيوضح الكونسنت، بيوضح ايه اللي بيحصل في الادفرتايزنج بتاعك، بيوضح كل حاجه. انا بشير بسرعه كده اشكال، لكن مثلا حاجه من الحاجات المهمه في الادفرتايزنج اللي ممكن تاثر على الماركتنج، البروفايلنج تكنيكس. هو بقى مطالب انه يطلعها بنسبه في حتت الريبورت بيبعته بس للاثوريتيز، فهتلاقيه مكتوب فور برايفسي ريزونز، انا كنت واخد سكرين شوت بس فور برايفسي ريزونز ريداكتد، وفي حتت هو مطلعها للعام. زمان هو ما كانش ملزم بده، فبالنسبه لاي حد شغال في الماركتنج في شركاتنا وانترستد يعرف موضوع البروفايلنج بيحصل ازاي بالظبط، ده شيء مهم. الحاجه الثانيه ان هم introduce a concept of whistle blowing. هل كلنا عارفين ايه الويسل بلوينج بيعمل ايه؟ خلاص يبقى يعني فبقى في دي ام اي سبيشاليزد ويسل بلوينج عشان يحمي، طبعا الشركات دي كبيره قوي فمش هيطمنوا للبروسيس اللي جوه، فبقى في دي ام اي ودي اس اي ويسل بلوينج ويب سايت. ده الدي ام اي، وانا زي ما قلت لكم بما انه مش هيأثر علينا دايركت بس في بنفيت ممكن ناخده، جبته بسرعه. انا مش عارف ليه بتاع ده مش شغال. الديجيتال سيرفيسز اكت هو الناحيه الاخرى منه، بيفوكس اكتر على الاند يوزرز وعلى الانترميديتس مش على البلاتفورم نفسه. وعشان كده بيقول ensuring a safe and accountable online environment. طيب ليه احنا ده ممكن يفرق معانا؟ لو لاحظتوا هتلاقي في جزء كبير جدا 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 من الشابترز له علاقه بالاوبليجيشنز اللي موجوده. وسام تريفيا، حد فيكم لاحظ حاجات غريبه هنا على الناحيه اليمين؟ دول الناس اللي بيطبق عليهم القانون. في اي حد ركز في واحد ضحك؟ براكتيكلي حتى الناس بتاعه البورن، المجموعه اللي على اليمين included، لان لقوا ان عدد الناس بيخش عليهم، فبقى في ترانسبيرنسي ايفن في البورن. موضوع مضحك شويه بس ستيل حبيت احطه، انه كل المجموعه اللي على الشمال دي اعتقد معظمنا اتعامل معاها يوم او اخر، شين، تيمو، علي اكسبريس، دول اكيد موجودين. ابل ومايكروسوفت كلهم موجودين، بوكينج، ايفن سناب شات وتيك توك وبنترست وميتا، كل دول موجودين، حتى ايفن بتوع البورن اتحط. طب ده بيفرق معانا في ايه؟ انه بقى مطلوب يبقى فيه تارجتنج. والحقيقه القانون ده شويه معقد، لان هو اتكلم على كل دول، من اول اللي بيسموهم فيلوسيز اللي هم الفيري لارج اونلاين بلاتفورمز والفيري لارج اونلاين سيرش انجنز. عشان كده لو رجعنا ورا هتلاقي مايكروسوفت، امازون، جوجل والناس دي، وهتلاقي سناب شات ولينكدين وتيك توك واكس وكده، سوري، وجوجل ومايكروسوفت عشان بينج. وفي نفس الوقت ايوه اتكلم على الليفل الاقل الاونلاين بلاتفورمز، واتكلم على الهوستنج سيرفيسز، واتكلم على الانترميديتري سيرفيسز. فهو مش بيتاتش بس الناس الكبار. في حاضر I can switch no worries. يعني I'm sorry but I'll have to switch in English. We have some guests. كان هيبقى اسهل بصراحة لو كملت بالعربي بس it's fine. Hello, welcome and thank you so much for coming. So basically, because it's very wide and it talks about everything, they introduced the concept of proportionality. For the moment, the immediate effect went to develop VLOCs because they are governed directly by the European Union communities, while everything else in this pyramid is going to be done by competent authorities where the companies are registered. So it becomes a bit of a local discussion. Up till now, it's not done. What is important about it is public transparency about terms and conditions, reporting, profiling. Everything that we talked about in DMAs is also talked about in DSA. Content moderation, and it's worth mentioning something called statement of reasons. That's Article 17 of the law. If you got any of your posts somewhere moderated, as they just rejected it, they have to submit to the EU, if you're an EU citizen or if your account is attached to an EU profile, why they did so, and it's called the statement of reasons. And it's a public thing, so at some point they need to supply you with a number. It's like complaints, right? You get a complaint reference and you can ask why. This is the case. So for us as users, this is important. The rest should do the same. And even a lot of the requirements are mainly for developers and LOCs, but SEs, but also they want to make sure that you do a risk assessment and risk mitigation. And this is kind of a theme across all the new EU cyber laws, that everything starts with a risk assessment and everything has to be documented in terms of risk. And of course, independent audit, maybe the red lines more apply for the top of the pyramid rather than the bottom, but it's the case. And of course, protection of minors. Is this in action or is it happening? Yes, it is in action for the VLOPs and VLOCs. You can see the risk and audit reports publicly. And again, they are allowed to redact some stuff and only share it with surveillance authorities. But now you get to know over all of these, Bing, Booking, Apple, AliExpress, Google, what's happening there. And they do have a full transparency database. You can see the number of statements of reasons. You see the number? And you can search it. And you can even work with Power BI directly on the website. And again, whistleblowing, because they want to make sure that if an operator is misbehaving and people inside that major company want to whistleblower related to anything DSA, they can. I just wanted to show also that even a famous porn website, they did comply. So it's not just a joke or, something I did out of fun. It's actually in place. These people, even those people, have to comply. Digital Services Act is coming in a few, I would say, years when it gets adopted internally to the lower levels of the pyramid. Hosting services and also intermediary services. So ISPs is in intermediary services. Hosting, I think you know hosting. So there is a lot of these coming, not just the VLOPs and VLOCs. Now we get a little bit more than just the surface, because DMA and DSA, as I said, for the moment, the focus is on very large online platforms. I hope that you work for Amazon or Google at some point, but I am not, so I skipped that part. And the big elephant in the room next to me, because I'm still an elephant, but a different elephant. So the Artificial Intelligence Act is one of a kind for the moment. It's the only regulation or law across US or EU or even China. No, the Chinese has something, but it's not a law, it's kind of recommendation. This is the only one that's already out of the box, out of the parliamentary process. And the idea is to make AI safe to use. Important aspect that, I think the screen looks a bit different, but this is a product safety law. So the whole idea is that if a product has an AI aspect, that product is safe to use for EU citizens. And I don't know if you guys know this marking. How many know the CE marking? Like, by raise of hands, 2, 3 people, okay. If you flip your phone, most probably you'll find it. It's called Conformité European. And it basically means that this product, to the best knowledge of the EU, and that's an important aspect, best knowledge, was not always assessed by EU, is safe to use. So in order to get the CE kind of stamp, and there is a digital version of it for software, you have to follow the law if you have an AI aspect to your product, whether it's SaaS or on-prem, it doesn't matter. Whether it's part of your, the Roomba, the robot that cleans your floor, is the same. The main reason you will see that date of being into effect becomes a bit of a conundrum. Is it February 2nd? Is it August 2nd? Is it August 2nd, 2026? Is it August 2nd, 2027? That will come clearly in how it looks like as an act. This is how it looks like. 13 chapters with over 113 articles. And guess what? Guess what? Sorry. 13 annexes. It's a huge law. So just a disclaimer, I will never be able to cover it incomplete. I will try as much as possible to provide you with what you need to know about it, and then the rest you will have to do your own research. The story goes like, what is prohibited, what is criminal to do under AI Act? That's chapter 2. What is the requirements for what they call high-risk AI systems? So then you need to know what is a high risk, what is a low risk, to know if that applies to your product. What is the transparency obligations for providers and deployers? So they started to have personas. Not just the manufacturer is the one that has to do the compliancy. Also, if the manufacturer is outside of the EU, the deployer, the importer, has the same obligations. They had a special chapter about general purpose AI models, and take care, this is not generative AI. Because we have been doing this a lot, that AI is all about ChatGPT or, no. Your car has AI, especially if it has lane assist, that's AI. There are different levels of AI. Specific purpose, general purpose, that's one of them, and that's why they have a definition. General purpose is split into 2. General purpose without a systematic risk, meaning it was not trained on a huge set of data, and they have a specification for that. And general purpose AI that is trained on a huge set of data. Also, anything related to health and safety is by definition high risk with systematic profile. And then you get to see like the obligations for each one. There is something called code of practice. It's all about the ethics, to make sure there's no bias. And then you have something nice, which is the EU database for high-risk AI systems. So if you wanted to purchase something and you want to know if it's high risk or not, you can check this database. Some of this didn't happen yet, so the timeline is also coming. And then, of course, there are some organizational stuff like post-market. So my product is already in the market. Who's going to do the monitoring? Who's going to do the information sharing? Which is also a nice concept that they started to talk about. Originally, if you have an incident, regardless of its security or not, you would keep it to yourself, right? This is not to be shared outside the company, and if really it affects a lot of people, you have to have a communication strategy about it. Now, they want to have information sharing methods regulated and also mandated. So that's an important thing. On serious incidents, you have to share your incident information, your enforcement, and your remedies. You have to. It's not really a choice. Of course, there are some cases, just like any law, there is, an exception path, but the general majority, you have to actually implement this. The annexes, as you can see, has a lot of things, one of which that's important, Annex 5, is when you self-assess your product, because it's not a high risk, and it's not a general purpose, and it's not, let's say, prohibited AI. Prohibited is you cannot do it anyways. You just declare it, and then you automatically get the CE marking. So not every single product will have to go through all the pain in this huge law. These are the highlights. What is prohibited AI practices? That's Article 5. What is high risk? That's Chapter 3, Section 1. What is general purpose? And as I told you, without systematic risk and with systematic risk, what are the penalties? We do have a database. And what is innovation support? So also the EU said, what if we want to test something high risk? We don't want to penalize companies, right? We want them to be able to innovate. So they created something called the AI Sandbox. It's an initiative within each member state where companies can apply, especially startups, and say, we want to do something, we're not sure if it's going to be good or bad. How can we do it? The classification of AI, I'm going to go more on what is prohibited, what is high risk, and maybe skip a little bit because I feel like you guys are already sleeping and I'm between you and lunch. That's not nice. You are not allowed to do exploitation of vulnerabilities or of persons, manipulation, and use of subliminal techniques. One of the very famous images on the internet is an image of 5 ladies and a gentleman walking across the street down in New York, Times Square. It looks perfectly like a normal image. Few people, like if you check their faces, you start to see, they look very similar. Most probably that's AI generated. But subliminally, it says obey. So for English-speaking native speakers, when they see the image and a speaker like myself is saying something like, for example, drink, you would find everyone drinking. I don't have the image, so it's just by coincidence that he was drinking. But that is also prohibited. Exploitations of persons, okay, we know that everyone who's going to ask about AI is going to ask, for example, about African people. And then the AI would always say, no, they're not trustworthy, especially Egyptians. No, that cannot happen. That's prohibited. So bias is also under that. Social scoring for public and private purposes. I don't know if you know, but China implemented in some areas social scoring. It's a public system that kind of identifies you through your image in the street, and according to your social score, you're allowed in places or not. This is not allowed under the EU law. Individual predictive policing based solely on profiling people. So, Ramzy, that guy is, let's say, fat. He should not be allowed in Burger King because there is extra fat over there. No need. This is also prohibited. And believe it or not, some companies think about it for marketing purposes, not really for the silly example that I gave. Untargeted scraping of internet or CCTV for facial images to build up or expand databases. Of course, this is a marketing heaven, if I'm able to profile people. So this is not allowed. Emotion recognition in the workplace. Now we all have to do like this. my beloved manager. You are always in my love. Because otherwise, if they see me unhappy, that's a problem. So this is also prohibited. And it's very clear that monitoring of the tiredness levels of a pilot is a different story, because that's a safety issue. And there has to be a consent, and it has to be disclosed. We are monitoring you. And by the way, Tesla, for example, as a car, has something called driver drowsiness alert. If they see me driving and I'm like sleepy, it gives you an alert. This is approved for AI because that's for safety. But again, it's a medical or safety thing, and you will find that this always gets into the exception that we have. I mean, you don't have to apply for an exception, but it's an exception in the law. Biometric categorization of natural persons. I won't go through this. This is all human rights. Basically, to know your race, your gender, your political stance, this is not allowed. Real-time remote biometrics identification for in publicly accessible spaces by law enforcement. So even law enforcement, we are not allowed to identify us remotely. And I see someone smiling, he got the message. This is unfortunately because even in the EU, we love everyone, but subject to a narrow exceptions list in high and critical profile areas, parliaments, government buildings, certain government buildings. This is all criminal by law. And it's good to know, because if you're developing a software that you want to sell in the EU, you need to know what you can do and what you cannot do. The high-risk AI is biometrics if it's allowed by law, because we just said here safety, blah, 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 high risk. Critical infrastructure, so let's say we have an AI to detect issues in water. Sorry.
The issue of biometric identification is specifically talking about the biometric. Sometimes the law will persist identity changing. They will collect data about the legal biometric.
I think you're talking about the finger, but this is, again, there is always an exception. This is about remote and real time. The other one, there is consent. If you don't want to get the visa, you just don't give them your finger. The idea is all about consent. But here, it's not about consent. You don't know. You're walking in the street and someone is doing that remotely, and then they say, oh, we think Wissam is a terrorist, or we think Ramzy is a terrorist, and then it goes bad. So I agree with you, it's not like 100% human rights, but it still have its specific meaning there. Essential services, public, private, employment and workspace, education and training. I think you guys can know, like, all of these will affect how your life works, so it's high risk. And of course, justice and democracy, which you can directly relate the religious aspect, the political opinions over there. So for AI, that's general purpose. And that's the point. I won't go through everything here, but if you don't have a systematic risk, you're not really designated by commission, blah, 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 so your requirements and obligations are really low. If you have systematic risk, and this is how you know if it's no or not, below 10 to the power 25 floating point operations, your general purpose low risk. Most of the stuff that does your car and this are below in this category. And then those ones, most of the stuff that are available are like this. Anything above has a high impact, and then you have a commission in the EU to designate you, just like we did with the DMA, DSA, where it says this is dangerous, we need to regulate it. They also define the personas. I'm going to just list them there, that the provider, deployer, authorized representative. So you cannot play games. You cannot go to Cayman Islands, create a company, and then say, you guys are using it in the EU without anyone will be blamed. For the innovation, I told you about the AI sandbox. Basically, it allows people to develop high-risk AI in a kind of isolated environment and under surveillance of the authorities. The details are there, and I'm going to share the slides, but just for the timing, I don't want to keep you till night. This thing is really, really big. What about the penalties? So you know how much is that? If you do prohibited AI, 35 million euros, or 7% of worldwide annual turnover for the preceding year. Worldwide annual turnover. Yes. if you do prohibit it. And of course, this is just the penalty. If your AI caused damage, you have the civil court. That's even worse. And if your AI basically caused the loss of lives, then you have the criminal court next to this. Any violation is 15 million euros or 3% of worldwide annual turnover for the next year. And the penalty for false labeling or misleading, saying high risk is not high risk because we can play that game together, right? Is up to 7.5 million or 1% of worldwide annual turnover. Important to say that if you did this, you will get this penalty plus most probably this penalty because you did not comply. Otherwise, why did you do it that way? And then for the enterprises, they do differentiation between enterprise and small and medium. For the enterprise, they will take the highest numbers of the penalties. For the small and medium, they will take the lower number of the penalties because they want to still push the innovation. Maybe the smaller entity didn't have enough, GRC or proper GRC team. That is the timeline. June 13, 2024, the act is passed by EU. February 2nd, 2025, Chapter 1 and 2 apply, which, by the way, applies to most of the companies in the EU, because in these chapters, they talk about awareness for end users and having a policy to regulate AI. So thank you, Osman, and thank you, Wissam, for talking about this. And most of us had the policy written, and already the awareness happened in December or November. And then we are here in February, May 2nd, 2025. Code of practice, which is a requirement for general purpose AI, has to be there and published. This is public statement. And then August 2025, the rest of the chapters. And the important part is that from August this year, August 2nd, the penalties will start to apply. So the whole thing is almost done. 2026, the full regulation in force. 2027, the classification for AI that come in between these, so maybe AI comes now, a new company, will apply also 2027. There is a reason why I have the timeline, because there is a shift of the public taste in the EU after Trump got elected in the US. So I'm not talking politics, I'm reporting facts, just an FYI. This is the one that everyone is talking about, the Digital Operation Resilience Act. For this one, I'm going to go a little bit deeper, so I apologize if it's going to be longer, and apologies that I already took a lot of your time. This one is about financial safety. The reality is it's not a cybersecurity law. It's an operational resiliency law. It's an availability law. When you check it out, it's a nice 9-chapter, talking mainly, you can see here the term security is not really there. It's risk management, incident management, testing, third-party risk, and information sharing. Risk management, incident management, testing, third-party risk, sharing. I'm going to talk about 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to skip the information sharing because it's really for entities within the EU, how they share, with which they share, and it has a lot of organizational stuff that I think you can read it if you need, but not all of us will be part of this. Next to this, they had what they call a regulatory technical standard, because some articles have the intention, almost like a policy, and we need to know the real controls, right? What are we complying with? So they have 3 RTSs. First RTS is how to classify ICT-related incident. So it's no longer, we think it's nice, so it's low. You cannot do it. And then the other one is about detailed policy regarding contractual arrangements of the use of ICT services. So that's mainly ICT third-party risk. And again, it's not about just security, it's about availability, it's about the financial feasibility of a company. It has a lot of other aspects. And then the last one is about how to do the ICT risk management. But this is mainly for small and medium enterprise, because they said a bank is a bank, or telecom is a telecom. It's a big company by definition. But for smaller ones, we want them to still be safe, but with a simplified process. And then you have an implementing technical standard, and that is for what they call the information, I think it's written here, it's called the standard templates for the register of information. I think we all know the risk register. The register of information is kind of an expansion to that. It's not about the risk, it's about all the third parties, what contracts we have with them, what obligations we have, what is our rights, what is our SLA. SLA is written specifically. So I think in the war room, you were talking about like, do we have SLA crisis? That has to be there. I will skim through because I see you guys already tired, and I'm tired, I won't lie. These are all called financial entities. I guess you can see banks, crypto asset providers. I know in Egypt, crypto is not allowed. But in the EU, there is another law, not related at all to IT. It's called MICAR, M-I-C-A-R. It's about regulating entities that are into crypto. And this DORA is not against it. They are working together. MICAR is more about know your customer, how to, the banking stuff that I'm not part of. But this is more about ICT-related incidents. And you will find me like writing ICT third-party providers and financial entities. In the law, it's the other way around. But they mentioned all of these, investment firms, trade representatives, all of this. And they said, from now on, we're going to call them financial entities. And that's it. But ICT providers are named as they are. So if you're providing a bank with a service as an ICT or a telecom, because you're a critical service, by the way, you will have to be DORA compliant. Who is excluded? Yeah, I will leave this as much as it is cryptic and say it's mainly small and medium enterprises. Because that are of certain types, like insurance and reinsurance of undertakings, if it's small, like if it's always like that. And makes sense. I mean, if you are using it, also in DORA, the concept, and maybe this is my mistake, it was not written in the slides, the concept of proportionality. So I cannot use a small entity that is excluded from DORA to deliver a critical component or service from my bank, for example. I cannot do that. These are the 4 topics, as I said. The 5th is information sharing. We're not really going to talk about it that much. The ICT risk management, ICT-related incident management, digital operation resilience, and the managing ICT risk. I just wanted to highlight here the biggest points. So in governance and organization, they clearly state separation of duties. I think we all know that concept. The testing strategy has to be there. Full documented ICT risk management framework, and you can see me put it in bold, so you cannot say we do it, but we don't have documents. And then, of course, part of it is more about scalability and maybe, proportionality. You cannot have one server for a 50 million user thing. It's common logic, but it happens apparently in some banks, even in EU. How to handle the incidents, including classification, detection, reporting, because now you have to report to a central authority. The testing, the digital operation resiliency, the range of assessments, like you have to check your vulnerabilities, open source, network security. So it's actually coming to a technical aspect. And then advanced testing with what they call threat-led TLPT. I think I made a mistake here. This is reversed. Because threat-led pen testing, originally, and I'm not saying banks, but as I said, financial institutions, were pen testing whatever they want and say, I have a pen test, it says I'm good, bye. Now it has to be threat-led based, meaning what is your highest threat? This has to be tested on live environment, not on non-live environment. And there is a whole framework by the European Central Bank. It's called Cyber EU, threat intelligence-based red teaming. And this is also why this is this TLPT. And then, of course, the third party and fourth party So the third parties of your third party has to be managed, and a multi-vendor ICT strategy. And then the critical ICT third party has to be provided to the supervisory authorities, so you have to report on this. Just before I continue, like, are you guys okay to continue, or you're already tired? Okay. Who are the European supervisory authorities? The banking one, the insurance and occupation and pension authority, and securities and markets authority. And it just makes sense. The one that's for the banks, and the one that's for insurance and others, and the ones that mainly for exchanges. Important to know that we do have what they call national competent authorities. Basel is more, to my best knowledge, you know I'm not a banker, so if I say something silly, guys, apologies. Basel is where they have the meeting for the central banks across the world, and they take a decision. So in my humble opinion, European Banking Authority is the one that goes to Basel. But the other one is about insurance, like, yeah. But actually, it's not the European Central Bank, it's the one regulating. You know, there is always a regulator. Just like here in Egypt, there is the, at least before I left, there was the, I think it's called the Capital Market Authority regulating the exchange. Now it's financial, yeah, this one. This is like the authority, but then you still have the clearance house and the exchange, and these are different ones. And also you have in Egypt, the Egyptian Central Bank. So I don't know if they have a relationship with each other. I'm not a banker, guys. That part, you're the experts there. If you see the whole story here, it talks about who does what. So for the European supervisory authorities, the higher, they set the tone. They basically put the policies, and they supervise ICT risk management. Here, they ensure compliance. In short, the higher authority, policies, procedures, standards. The lower authority, let's see if you're doing things right. And of course, there is a lot of discussions between them. The international law is, of course, the European supervisory authorities. I'm going to talk about the ICT risk. So I'm going to take one topic by each other and just cover the rest. And again, the idea is to go into just a quick, I have no clue why this is not working. Yeah. So for the risk framework, I got the highlights because it's a whole RTS. I won't go through it. But top management is involved, so there has to be a designated board member responsible for that. I guess in banks it's easy, CRO, but in other companies there is not always a CRO position. It has to be in the management body, meaning the board. So C-level, not someone reporting to the risk committee with, you know, like a letter of independence. No, it has to be a board member. They have to get continuous education every single year. So prepare to talk to your board member that they will be going into IT-related training because they need to understand IT risks. And I didn't say IT security. This is inherently there, IT-related training. So this whole story of like, my secretary come and move my mouse because I don't know how to use the laptop, then you shouldn't be a C-level, with all respect. Governance, so you have to put documentation, maturity of it, the reporting. Reporting has a lot of guidelines, especially on critical incidents. Resilience strategy, so what's your business continuity, what's your disaster recovery? A lot of people think of business continuity as a technical thing. Sorry, no, we're talking about the whole story, digital and physical, and the physical world. Capability of ICT assets. So I don't think anyone in GRC ever thought about do we have enough servers or do we have enough cloud accounts? Or normally it's not our thing, but it is there and you need to have controls around it. So all the capacity management that never have been done in IT for 10 years will have to be done now and reported on. See, you're unhappy about it, but it's the law, man. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just, you know, passing the information. And crisis and communication management. So what Wissam was saying in the crisis and war room, it's actually now mandated by law that you have to have a full crisis strategy, communication plan. You also have to have alternative means of communication, just in case the first means, like let's say Teams and stuff, are compromised. All of that is there. You have to have two types of internal communication, one with people involved in the incident, one with people who are not involved, the rest of the employees, including what they should do about communicating or not communicating to each other and to external, and an external strategy. So a whole bunch of data there. This is more the first topic. Man. This is the details. I don't think you want me to go through it. But you find one thing that I wanted to mention. In the risk identification, legacy ICT systems, at least annually, have to have a risk assessment. So I felt that this is important to mention, and that's why the rest is there. There is a lot of nice points, but just not to waste your time in it. The most important one is the legacy ICT systems. And you get to see maintain an updated ICT system, reliability, it's all there. Just one thing that you need to monitor the effectiveness. Also, that's an important aspect, that you cannot really not do drills. Before, we used to do tabletop exercise and say, yeah, everything is nice. Now we have to do the drill on the live systems. This is the rest of the thing. There is here something interesting. If you are a financial institution, apparently, you can monitor user activity if it's related to an ICT incident. So it's a bit of a vague part, but it is there. And of course, as we said, the framework for SMEs is different. That's why you will find Article 16 and the simplified ICT one. Next, we're going to talk about the ICT incident management. Again, how to clarify it. These are the criterias. I think you know most of them, so it's common logic, but they give you ideas about thresholds in the RTS itself. I didn't put the thresholds because I think this is irrelevant now, but like if you have clients or financial counterparts or transactions, then this is what you measure on. Reputation, this is what you measure on. Downtime, this is what you measure on. Geographical spread, this is what you measure on. Data loss, this is what you measure on. Criticality, this is what you measure on. And of course, it makes sense. If the service is critical, then most probably the incident is critical. Common knowledge, common logic, but they wanted to make sure you have to do it in a systematic way. At the end, it's all about economic impact. So even if it's a bunch of small incidents that cause an economic impact, guess what? It gets updated to be a critical incident. Here's something actually worth mentioning. Consider direct and indirect cost. And you can see here some costs that nobody ever talks about in ICT. One of the most important one is staff costs. I cost you money, huh? This has to be part of the incident. Everyone, from the CISO, C-level that was staying on a call for no reason for 45 minutes, or the engineer who stayed working 5 days. All of them has to be there. Customer compensation, lost revenues, and. We're going to go about the actual law, digital operation resilient testing. And this is where you would see there are requirements generically. Part of them is the comprehensive digital operation resilience testing program, the assessments, risk-based approach, independent parties. This is an important part. And also, if you do use an internal testing, you actually have, I think, it's written here somewhere, every 3 years, no, at least yearly, you have to do on important critical functions an external one. So you cannot fake it anymore. So you can fake it for a few months, but not the whole thing. And it goes about testing of ICT tools, what kind of tests. You can see gap, physical, even security reviews, everything is listed there. I have no clue why this doesn't work. Is it dead? Did I kill it? It doesn't look dead. Okay. The part that I was mentioning about the threat-led pen testing, you must use an external pen tester every 3 tests. So if you want to use it internally, you have to do it every 3 tests externally. The frequency is adjusted by the competent authority, and the Tiber EU that I was telling you about should be used. Even testers that are going to do this kind of pen testing have now some kind of a standard. And you can see, when using internal tester, the reuse must be approved by the competent authority. So it means that the pen tester you have, or the red team you have at the bank or at the financial entity, will have to be kind of registered and approved by the central bank. This is also something new. Now we talk about the framework. It's a connection between chapter 4 and chapter 2. Again, the proportionality principle, honestly, I see this as common logic, but now it's mandated by law. It's like, what would you do first? The scale and complexity and importance should be done first. If it's critical and important, should be done first. Potential impact should be done first. And also, you need to check the risks of contractual arrangements. This is more about, again, third-party risk. So the main reason they call it here is like they want you to have a comprehensive look, not just dissected look. Strategy on ICT third-party risk. Again, the management body should regularly review the risks. Management body here in the law means board level. Someone in the C-level has to have the knowledge. That's why they need to be educated. And again, the most important aspect, the register of information, which is really crazy because like the amount of data required there is overwhelming. You need to do due diligence before third party. I think that's common knowledge about third party risk management. And then you have to only use institutes or companies that are having updated information security standards. I would give an example because this is a bit vague. ISO 27001 has a 2013, I think, I'm not mistaken, it's the end of the day, I'm tired, and a 2022 edition. And I think up till the next 2 years, you are allowed to use the 2013 edition. But for a critical or important function, the DORA tells you, no, you're not allowed. You have to actually do a new one. And of course, frequency of audits should be part of what you look at. I know I took a lot of time in the DORA, but because this is more relevant to everyone, the rest I will go a little bit faster. Contingency measures, again, you have to have contingency planning, basics. The key contractual provisions, they have a lot of what you can see here, what to do and what not to do, but what's most important is what's in bold. You have to have in writing what is your rights and what's your obligations. It has to be clear because all of us have skipped the agreements with next finish. We just cannot do it anymore. The last topic was the information sharing. I left it as a question mark because it is not clear now in the EU, entities outside of the EU, will they abide by the information sharing rules inside, or they will have to be regulated at a later stage for something different. That's why I had it as a question mark, that it's not yet answered. Yeah, that was DORA. I hope it was informative enough. We're going to go now into NIS2 and also CRA. These are the last two acts. NIS2 is the idea of upholding security in 18 critical sectors across the EU. It's an upgrade for NIS1. I think, if I'm not mistaken, NIS1 was in 2016. So NIS2 just came in 2022. Unfortunately, because it's a directive, and that's why it's in red, it's not enforced directly. It's still taking some time. A lot of what's inside the law, which is 9 chapters, is more organizational within the EU because it's a continuation of or upgrade of NIS1. The only maybe chapter that we will talk about a little bit is chapter 4, cybersecurity risk management measures, and one article that ends up into becoming a complete law. This is the timeline. It entered into force in 2023. They are updating the sector-specific regulations since July 2023, like DORA, for example. Remember, we're talking DORA is only for financial entities. 17 October 2024, all member states adopt laws. This is a lie. A lot of member states couldn't do it in time. And then 7 November, the implementing act, which says you have to do it by this time. And then we are here, hopefully 17th of April this year, we will have at least a list of what is called critical and essential entities. And that is why I was very light with NIS2, because up till now, each country has to come up with their own law. Sorry. This was the scope of NIS1: digital infrastructure, energy, health, healthcare, drinking water, banking, transport, financial markets. And then they moved the scope to digital providers, manufacturer, distribution, research, manufacturing, space, wastewater, public admin, post and couriers, and waste management, and food production. So you can see it's almost the whole society is under NIS2. And they classify them into essential and important. Essential are the entities that are considered critical due to their significant impact on society. And important are those that are not essential, just to be, they're still important, but they're in the same sector, but are not essential. Because to be honest, like how they wrote it is not the best, but that's the case. And again, you see banking, you see digital infrastructure, you see digital providers. So this is a bit weird. We were just discussing DORA. True, but NIS2 is more about the infrastructure itself. It goes a little bit deeper into infrastructure, and not about the processes or the frameworks of the risk management. It still calls for risk management because they love the term. One thing they gave, and thanks to the Center of Cybersecurity in Belgium, is how to define large and small and medium enterprise. If your annual turnover is above 50 mil, and then the annual balance sheet is above, I think, 45, if I'm not mistaken, or 50, then you're above 250 FTEs, you're definitely large. And you can see the difference. It's FTE based, so the number of employees, and also the number of annual turnover. So if you are somehow, and I think maybe some small companies do that, if you're below FTE 50, below 50 employees, and somehow you're passing the 43 million euros balance sheet, you're still large enterprise. That's why I loved how they presented it, and I took it copy and paste, because it's really clear that it's not straightforward. Or this amount, then this amount. You have to follow the whole thing. It's important to mention why this is important. I made a mistake here and didn't put it. If you are an SME and not a large enterprise, even if by definition you're critical, you're essential, you become important, because you cannot be both. You cannot be really a very small enterprise and being used in a critical service, right? Doesn't make sense. That's why they had this designation. One reason why you have a bit of a legal text in very big format, this is the only article that talks about anything related to security in the law. Everything else is organizational. It's Article 21. And it says, essential and important entities take appropriate and proportionate technical, operational, and organizational measures to manage the risks posed to the security of the network and information systems which those entities use for their operations or for the provision of their services, and to prevent or minimize the impact of incidents, blah, 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 blah. They took this and it went into all of the above, and this is on the right side, you will find the actual article. On the left side, you will find kind of an almost abbreviation for it. Again, everything is there. Risk management, InfoSec, incident management, business continuity, supply chain, security at all stages, development, vulnerabilities, reporting vulnerabilities, effectiveness of cybersecurity measures, cyber hygiene and training, cryptography, policy, procedure, and implementation, HR security, access control, asset management, multi-factor authentication, zero trust. All of that is written as A, B, up till J. And the last one, so to make Wissam happy for a bit, secured emergency communication systems. It's there. So, and by the way, for Wissam's sake, here it is. Secures video, voice and video and text communication and secured emergency communication systems within the entity where appropriate. Number 8 policies on risk analysis. So But, you know, there is good news, right? There is sometimes good news. Lunch is coming. That's a good one. Ah, come on, man. I don't know. I wish this works first. Yeah. If you see these requirements are in the annex, policies, governance, operations, security, everything you see over here is like a repetition. The best part is, I don't know if you, because I may be blocking it, can you see the ISO 27001? NIS2 was written based on ISO 27001 2022 edition to some extent. So they are not equal, but if you are ISO 27001 certified, it depends on the scope, because some of us certify a server remotely somewhere or a process that doesn't make sense. If you really certify in a proper sense, you are NIS2 compliant. So that is also a plus. That is also a plus. I hope here, it works here. One thing that was worth mentioning is the incident reporting. You reported to authorities, mainly ENISA, European Network Information Systems Agency, I think, Network Information Security Agency. Incident detected, you have to register it, so you have to have a registry of the incidents. Within 24 hours, you have to report it to authorities. Within 72 hours, you have to do a report, including incident handling details, what are you doing, basically, and within 1 month, you have to find the final report. So that's a reporting obligation that is new to some extent, and it has a very aggressive timeline when it comes to the first initial reporting. And I think that's relevant because that will apply to even entities outside of the EU if they provide the service within the EU. Any SaaS software, so if you, I don't think Talabat is SaaS, but like any SaaS-based one, I have nothing from Egypt here in my mind now, but any SaaS software, you will have to comply with NIS2 if you want to sell in the EU. Come on, we're working. These are the penalties, either 10 million or 2% of the organization's annual global turnover. And even though a lot of the entities will be public, they are going after them. These penalties will apply. So more or less, this is NIS2, or at least the highlights. And we reach our last contender, Cyber Resilience Act. This one is also far-reaching outside of Europe. It is a product security. It says ensuring product safety of all products with a digital component. And again, you will find me putting for any product safety one, the Conformité Européenne, which is the CE mark, because the whole story is 90% of software should be out of this law, 10% should go in. But the 10% is nice or interesting. The target is non-SaaS. SaaS will have NIS2. Hardware and software component or software only. 90% is self-assessment, 10% is critical, class 1 and class 2, and these 10% is the ones that we'll talk about. You get to see that self-assessment is there in the 90%, so it doesn't mean that you're not regulated, that you can do games. You need to comply with some stuff, but you will do a self-assessment, and you can do the declaration yourself. The example, photo editing, word processing, smart speakers, hard drives, games, stuff that are not really of critical nature. Then you have critical class 1 and 2. And the idea is its functionality on intended use or other criteria is really critical. Once class 1 would require standard or third-party assessment. Class 2 is third-party assessment only. These are an examples from the Annex 3. Password managers, network interfaces, firewalls, microcontrollers are class 1. Operating systems and industrial firewalls, CPUs, secure elements are class 2, which means that anything really critical that is not a SaaS is part of class 2. These are just examples. Hypervisors, so your new VMware is a class 2. And the vendor has to give you some obligations, and that's what's important. Like, these are from the annexes, you can read them on your own time, but what is more important is that any persona, and that was a discussion, I think, in third-party risk management yesterday, can I sue the manufacturer? Right now, you cannot really buy from Microsoft directly in most of the cases, or I don't want to be against anyone, it's not against Microsoft, I'm giving it as an example. Usually you buy through channel partners, and to be able to sue them, you have to basically sue the channel partner, win the lawsuit, and then take a civil action against the manufacturer. They created all these personas, manufacturers, importers, distributors. I would leave the rest and explain them, and they call them economic operators. So if the company is not in the EU, but the product is in the EU, it has an importer or a distributor. They are liable to be CRA compliant. And then you are liable to directly sue them if something is wrong. They also put some obligations on the user and give some rights to the user. And also SMEs, as well as open software stewards, like Open Source Foundation or Apache or stuff like that. They do have also some obligations there. And the vulnerability researchers, because they ask them to do some role, which is basically reporting the responsible disclosure. These are the different personas and responsibilities. You will find that manufacturers, importers, distributors have always this: take due care to comply with CRA, ensure product complies with CRA, ensure products comply with CRA, and of course, at the end, products are designed. One of the major important aspects about CRA is that you have, before to design or develop your product, to have a cybersecurity risk assessment documented, and you have to follow up on it on all iterations of your software. Also, for the vulnerabilities, you have to disclose them, and you have for the 10 years to provide security patches. So no longer the case with the Samsung G4 that is still hurting me up till now, where they one day said, we just released it 6 months ago, we're not giving you updates. They also have, I wouldn't say mandated, minimum support time, but it's almost mandated to be 5 years. So when you buy something, it's usually around 5 years. And these are the different paths where you have to do as a manufacturer. In design and development, you have to have a documented cybersecurity risk. You have to have third-party risk assessment. So you have to have on your software, software bill of material. If the product is basically software and hardware, you have to have a bill of material for your hardware. And with the authorities, at least, because this is the part I don't have up in my head, you have to have transparency. Maybe not with the end user, because of course this could be trade secrets, but with the surveillance authorities you have to. You get to see vulnerability handling, identification, documentation, remediation, and updates for 10 years. The support period must reflect the actual use case, so it's not like I buy a firewall and tomorrow morning they say, oh yeah, you can remove it every day. It doesn't work like that. And if they play it that way, they get penalties. Recommended the minimum of 5 years. The documentations that they have to have is all of this. And most importantly, the risk assessment, as well as the third-party information, has to be available 10 years for the market surveillance authorities. This is a lot of obligations on software developers because it's a heavy one for them. They do have the computer security incident response teams. These are already part of another act called Cyber Solidarity Act and Cybersecurity Act. I never mentioned them here because they are mainly organizational. You have to report to them. Early warning notification 24 hours, almost following the same reporting as NIS2, 24 hours, 72, and then final after 1 month. Again, the conformity assessment, depending on where you are, either it's self-assessment or third-party assessment or the class 2, the authorities will have to be involved, and then you get the CE marking. There has to be information to the users about the security or the secure product of the software. I think I missed to put right here, it has to be secure by default. Basically, security by design, privacy by design aspects has to be done on that software. The end date has to be clearly to the month and year. We don't say 5 years from when it was introduced to the market. No, it has to be a certain date. Single point of contact for vulnerabilities, disclosure, and reporting. So again, I think for software, we're used to that, but think about your robot at home, the Roomba. This one is under that act, and normally you wouldn't know whom to contact for such things. So they have to have a single point of contact for this. The corrective measures done by either the operator, so manufacturer, importer, distributor, is 3. Immediately fix non-conformity and report it, fine, good. Or withdraw it from the market or recall it completely. So the withdrawal is like we're not selling any new points until you fix it, and then the recall is like we basically take it over and pay you compensation. The end of life obligation is once the product is end of life, the market surveillance authorities has to be informed, and as much as possible the end users, because of course, you know, if you have 10 years ago introduced a mobile phone, definitely due to GDPR and others, you don't have the registered users anymore. You don't have a lawful reason to have it. Those are mainly the biggest obligations. I know that half of you are sleeping, and what I'm going to say next is bad. Yeah. So withdraw from the market is like basically you will not sell it anymore. You would say we stop selling it until it's fixed, and then you can reintroduce it again. So it's a timed withdrawal. Recalling is like, no, you have to actually get it because most probably it's unsafe to use, and you have to pay compensation. Yeah. So the main reason I said what I'm going to say next is not something you like that much, is are we regulating more or deregulating? This is the question. After the election of Donald Trump in the US for a second term, he reversed the executive order that was signed by Joe Biden to try and regulate AI in the US. And just as recent as 3 days ago, there was a meeting in Germany, and there was a discussion about AI ethics and AI development and safety, and the US and the UK refused to sign that agreement. And then The Economist, and this is where you have this nice screenshot, had an article which says, Milei, the new president of Argentina, if not mistaken, Modi, I think that's the prime minister for India, right? And Trump, the new president for the US, an anti-red tape revolution is underway. And they were talking about the competitiveness, that these countries feel they are not competitive enough because they are heavily regulated. So an idea of deregulation came to play. On the European side, we had Mario Draghi report about competitiveness. 3 years ago, he was asked by the EU to see if the EU is competitive enough in multiple areas. And with that one, on 29th of January 2025, we came with the compass to regain competitiveness, because his report, in short, says EU is gone in maybe a decade or something. The most notable mention is legal regime to simplify rules and reduce costs of failure. So the term simplification, unification, standardization equals either deregulation or less regulation or less strictness. And also it's coming from the same angle, competitiveness. And then DeepSeek came out of nowhere from China. And if we look on the flags downstairs, and I know that this sounds political, but for me, I'm talking about laws, so it is anyways a political talk. These are the 3 major economic powers next to Russia and India. But India is already mentioned in the first one, so we don't want to put India. Russia, at some point, it's hard to get resources due to, this is something I think you guys don't know, but in the EU, after the Ukraine-Russia war, there was an EU decision. Actually, I think it's an act, not just a decision, to block all the Russian media outlets. So Russia Today and Sputnik, the official Russian media outlet, is blocked. Someone like me who lives in the Netherlands, I am actually having to VPN to Egypt to be able to see Russia Today if I want to. And it is not allowed on all European managed satellites. It's not allowed on all European TV stations. We don't know anything about Russia. It's black. So that's why I couldn't mention anything about them. When DeepSeek came out, 20th of January 2025, 7 days later, there was a 600 billion USD drop in the pricing of NVIDIA. Then it recovered a little bit, and you can see the actual screenshot. China, up till now, doesn't have a regulation. It's just a recommendation about ethics and ethos of AI. And DeepSeek came and did this huge disruption, which forces us to talk backwards about competitiveness. EU is saying, oh, if China is doing that, if US is doing that, and if 3 days ago, UK also joined forces with US that we won't regulate, maybe it's better to postpone the AI Act. And that is also a little bit frustrating for someone who had to study all of this. But still also frustrating from a human aspect, because the AI is affecting our daily lives. And with this, we have a problem. I want to thank you so much that you stayed with me all of this time. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Definitely. This is a very, no, I get you. This is a very hard question to answer. I think yes and no. Because the AI Act, and I focused more on what I think will, you know, from a generic GRC standpoint, touch us, which is basically if we manufacture some software, if we do this. But from an end user perspective, there are some provisions about that. So you want to know, are we going to, for example, you can manipulate ChatGPT to some extent, or Google, to give wrong answers about certain topics. Maybe we will try to use it for to enforce some local aspect to it. For example, the very famous one about DeepSeek, ChatGPT, and Gemini is Taiwan a sovereign country or not? And everyone was blaming DeepSeek because it says Taiwan is part of China. Okay, Google would say it's a disputed thing. ChatGPT says it's a disputed thing. So it's not like everyone is saying Taiwan is sovereign, which is again, a kind of a non 100% approved from all countries kind of fact. It's not like the sun rises every day. No, it won't. It won't. But it will make it easier to maybe penalize some users, or, like, for example, it could be that you are not allowed to use AI to fake reporting in universities or fake writing theses. Like, it doesn't have to be politically agendaed. Just to be very frank, it could be really saying you are prohibited to use AI to generate fake theses and get master's or PhD degree. You are not allowed to use AI alone to create a presentation and come to GRC Summit. Because I know someone who did that. This one is not, I assure you. There is a lot of effort there, and also usage of AI. Because at the end, you cannot read more than 3,000 pages for each, for all of this. So I had to use some AI. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's okay to use it for certain aspects, but it's not okay to use it to fake things. I also wanted to have all the references of the legal documents. You can see all of them is from the Eurolex, so it's the official URLs for all of them. And you will see me here having a bit of a funny photo. That's what I'm going to close with. Unfortunately, you can do a lot of regulation and a lot of laws and parliaments and have everything trying to do the right way. But if the implementation stops or if politics change, then you don't get the benefit. So thank you. And if we have any questions, I think over lunch is better because I'm between you and food. And I won't do that anymore. I thought I'm in the morning. This is a kind of morning presentation. But thank you so much, and I hope I added something.